Hello and welcome to the Powered by Rock podcast, where we're going to be speaking with an absolute musical legend, in my opinion. He is one of the four musicians I would put on my personal Mount Rushmore of greatest musicians of all time. A man who should really not even need an introduction, but he's not only a demigod of indie rock, but also a TV trivia game champion. That's right. I'll be speaking with Tim Kasher from Cursive and The Good Life right after this. You're listening to the Powered by Rock podcast with your host, Isaac Kuhlman. The Powered by Rock podcast was created to help showcase some of the best rock musicians in the world and to pass on to future generations the rock music that has inspired rock fans around the world for decades. We want listeners to be able to hear great stories and life experiences directly from their favorite artists, as well as dig deeper into music theory and talk rock like no other show you've ever heard. This isn't about looking cool, it's about getting real and having a great time. Without further ado, let's start the show. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Powered by Rock podcast. Today, I have to pinch myself a little bit because I get to speak with one of my literal all-time favorite artists. Tim Kasher is on the show. Between Cursive, The Good Life, and his solo work, he's literally put out hundreds of songs that can take you on incredible emotional journeys. The God among men himself is here. Welcome, Tim. How's it going?
Hey, hi. How are you?
Good. Good to have you here. So, you know, it's funny because I just mentioned that you're a trivia game champion, and this was something that just kind of went to the air maybe 2 weeks ago or something like that. But you were on the TV show Chain Reaction, where I think you only had like one chain wrong in the whole thing, and you guys ended up winning the money.
It was pretty exciting.
Yeah,
let me tell you.
Yeah, I think I posted something on Instagram like, I've never seen a brooding musician look so happy and smile so much in my life.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So now, obviously, I've been listening to you guys for you specifically and all the things you've been doing for probably 20 years or so. And I don't recall a world in which Cursive wasn't one of my actual favorite bands. So to have you here is a pretty big honor for me. And the first thing I have to ask you about is your songwriting, because you get incredibly personal and intimate in so many songs that it feels like any longtime fan of your music probably feels like they know a lot about you. Does that kind of feel weird? Do you ever feel like you have to pull back some of the things, or is it like you're just an open book and you're okay to pull back the curtains on everything?
Unfortunately, I do hold back some stuff, but it's usually it's an inner dialogue that I'm having, and I always try to avoid personal self-censorship.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just feels necessary if it's at the expense of hurting people or hurting. If it's a lot of the stuff I write is about myself, and I can handle me being hard. I can handle being hard on myself.
Yeah.
So that's no big deal. But I do have to hold back here and there just because for that reason. But I think there's something I think ethical and proper about doing that, and other writers will say you should never do that. I remember there's like it's kind of weird to attribute this to Perry Farrell, but I think that's who I remember saying this back in the 90s, that you have to write with the assumption that your mom is not with us, you're like, your mother is not reading this, or your mother is no longer with us on the planet, or whatever, however you want to put it. And I get that makes sense. But I still think there's a threshold where sometimes the stuff you could say, I mean, you don't need I don't air dirty laundry through music. Yeah. And I don't think people should. I think it's like kind of petty.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like that law, or I think it was a Supreme Court justice once said something about the law. He said, like, your rights to your freedom end where another person's start, right? So, like, you shouldn't go out and try to belittle people and bring them down if, like, it's your point of view, right? Like, and I think you are one of the people who probably hold this to an even higher standard. You hold yourself to your own personal faults even more than probably faults that the other person might have had in a relationship or, a friendship or something like that, where you're like, yes, I understand. Like, I probably had as much to do or more to do with this fallout than you did.
I think a lot of writing hopefully would be about examination.
Yeah.
So by kind of like working through said examination. Hopefully you're learning something, and then also offering what you're learning to others who are listening.
Yeah. Now, I know you did I think you had a major in creative writing or English when you were in college, but did you actually have like a mentor that kind of helped you get through and work out your songwriting ability? Because I know some of the early stuff, like even Commander Venus and all the stuff from like way before, like Cursive, it was still really well written. I mean, the lyrics and everything were very personal and very well written.
I didn't really have I guess I didn't have a songwriting mentor, but we did have our songwriting, we did have our group of friends, and many of us wrote songs, and that helped a lot in the sense that we were all kind of keeping each other in check. And
well, I think, is it Ben from Bright Eyes is like one of your oldest friends, right? Or Corey, sorry, not Ben, Corey.
No, Connor, yeah.
Connor, Jesus, man, I'm all over the place. I'm like, why can't I think of his name for some reason?
I was like, who is this Ben? I don't remember a Ben in Bright Eyes.
I'm like, no, that's not it, but yeah.
But yeah, we would all, as the way that we often describe it is that we were just kept raising the bar to one another. So Connor maybe would write a new batch of songs and be like, oh my gosh, this is great, we all have to write this well now. And Ted Stevens would write a batch, with Lullaby for the Working Class, or now he's with Cursive. He'd write a batch of songs like, oh my gosh, now we're writing at this level. And it was always just exciting. But that helps. That wasn't really a mentor so much but it was
like peer appreciation.
Yeah, and also beyond like sounding boards, like we're able to like work all these ideas off each other and see like, oh yeah, this work, people really this, because songs will always stick out, stand out more than others, and that helps. But I did have some great professors for creative writing. So not for songwriting, but I did have some
poetry and stuff.
Yeah, or like creative writing, fiction.
Yeah.
And they helped really push me along.
Nice. So I know, obviously, I think everybody who should be watching this should be familiar with you and kind of a lot of the body of work you have, but not everybody's a Cursive fan. Not everybody's heard of Cursive. So I think like just if we don't have to get like the whole, like it's your musical journey's a vast one, but like just kind of get me into the mindset of when you first started music. What was it like? How did you start creating bands like Commander Venus and Slowdown Virginia? What was it with that, and how did you prepare from those projects to create like Cursive and The Good Life and your solo work?
When I first started writing, I wrote, actually, from the very beginning, I wrote this kind of heavy, morose stuff that I've come to be known for, I guess.
Yeah.
But initially, I felt really self-conscious about writing. Like what with one's heart on one's sleeve. It was just, it was a lot. It was difficult to be goofing off in the practice space with your teenage, with your 15-year-old friends, and then play this stuff that's just like too heavy,
Yeah.
So really, the way I started, a lot of it was a lot goofier, and I think it was just because it was kind of like, probably self-deprecating in a way, which is something I always kind of like maintained in my music, but also just I just couldn't take myself very seriously because I was too scared to, because I was a kid.
It's a protection mechanism.
As a kid, I lacked confidence, and so that was the bands March Hares and Slowdown Virginia, and both of them had serious songs as well, but there were fewer and further between. So when I was kind of like I was kind of coerced into starting Cursive, because there was a point in my life when I was going to, I was 20, and I was like, okay, I need to start focusing on my career as my college career, I guess. So I was kind of coerced into doing Cursive, and my feeling at the time was, okay, if I'm going to take another stab at music, I think it's time to, at the least I can do is take it seriously.
Yeah.
And that was like, that sounds really easy just to blurt it out like that, but it was an epiphany that was a really long time coming, actually.
Yeah.
To be like, all right, I grant you the right to take yourself seriously and proceed in that direction and see how it goes. So, and that was a really important shift for me. And now I feel like everything I released, everything I've released since like 1995, I can more or less say I'm proud of, and it's like everything's well thought out, well vetted, well edited, So.
Speaking of which, I mean, I think one of my favorite things about your music, and I know some of my friends' personal favorite things about your music, is that you tend to have overarching concepts for albums. So like not all of them are concept albums per se, but they do have like a concept or a kind of theme behind them. So like obviously Cursive albums like Happy Hollow, Domestica, and I Am Gemini being like an actual play written out for music, are quite clearly related to a central plot and setting. But then you have other ones like Vitriol or Get Fixed or Mama I'm Swollen, where it's more of like a feeling or a theme about what's reacting to the world around you. Like, how do you kind of decide when it's a good time to go for a clear concept versus, kind of one of those thematic ones instead?
There's been a few different versions of how, as you were just suggesting, but a few times here and there I've gone out for like the full concept, and that's, as you mentioned, that's like I Am Gemini, Happy Hollow, Good Life's album of the year.
Yep.
Those are Help Wanted Nights to a lesser extent. Those are the ones that kind of stand out to me as like they were ideas that came together kind of more earlier on, and then I had to kind of craft the record to fit the concept. Other ones like Ugly Organ or Domestica or Blackout, Good Life's Blackout, they're just so tightly themed that I kind of realized after the fact that that there was a concept being born without really, unbeknownst to me, kind of.
Yeah.
And so then I can finish. So then I would finish the album, being like, oh, I see what I'm doing here. This is a story about a troubled couple that are, what have you. And so then I could finish the album to kind of bind the concept together. The other versions are the ones that I consider to be non-conceptual, but they're still very thematic, and that is stuff like Vitriola or Mama I'm Swollen, Novena, Nocturne, Good Life. And that's just a matter of, that's just what I was thinking about a lot for like those 2 years while I was working on these songs. And sometimes, as the album starts to take shape, again, for albums like Vitriola, I tried to avoid it being heavily conceptualized. But the more the songs that were written for it, the more you start to recognize, like, oh, well, you don't want things to stick out too much. It's like it's an aesthetic thing, and so
sure, you don't want like a waltz sounding song and it's just randomly thrown in with like all the rest of the stuff.
Or nor do you want a song that's like now about like a clown that's like on a killing spree or something like that. Like, it doesn't like, it's not going to fit with the rest of the material. It's going to stand out too much.
Yeah, and I'm following you on the Patreon page that you have for the Tim Kasher's Home Phone, and you do actually write out like a lot of what you're thinking about during stuff, and you're like, here's a song that we were thinking about for Get Fixed or Vitriola or whatever, and it just didn't make it, and you've been sitting on this recording, and I'm like, I listened to it, and I'm like, damn, that's like some really good stuff, and I can see how it doesn't quite fit, but then also has elements of things around what you were working with. So, do you ever make that decision and just go, man, maybe I should have thrown that in there, or are you pretty happy with every decision you've made with each album?
No, I make wrong decisions all the time. It's really that's definitely a problem. It's something that we really come to accept, is that I'm not. I said earlier that everything's well edited, and that's true as far as I feel like the music. I would like to think, but as far as the editing of a compilation, of an album, that's where my tastes seem to differ a little too much from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really helps to have other cooks in the kitchen at that point to kind of help guide me and be like, oh no, Tim, this song that you have cast aside over here, this is actually everyone's favorite song.
Yeah.
Because I'm always like, I didn't know that. I couldn't hear it, or I just hear it. I hear it differently.
Yeah.
And so I have a tendency also to pick what I think are going to be like the big, like this is going to be a hit single, and everyone's like, no, it's definitely not.
I think you said that about The Recluse or something like that. You're like, oh, I thought for sure like this song would be, and I think it's a fan favorite. Well, I can't remember which song it was, but it was something like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's a great song. Or maybe it was something off of Happy Hollow. I can't remember which one, but it was like, still love this song. Like, absolutely. But there's so many good songs, Tim. Like, how do we pick like which ones? Like, you get 15 songs with you in a show or whatever. It's like, how do you narrow that down for like 15 songs or 10 songs or 12 songs on an album? It's pretty damn tough.
It's a fun process, though. I like to do it.
Yeah.
I like to do it.
Yeah. And it's funny because speaking of favorite songs, this actually segues great into my next question, because I want to state for the record that my personal favorite song you've ever written through all of your projects is actually What Have I Done, which is on Mama I'm Sworn. That's the last song on there. I think it's like an awesome case study in like regret, shame, fear, doubt. And I have to ask, like, what was your headspace for that song? How did you come up with that song? Was it based on any like actual stuff that talks about a traveling salesman and kind of like, what have I done with my career? Is this any sort of autobiographical kind of mention?
Yeah. It's semi-autobiographical, I guess I'd say.
Okay.
I always kind of reserve the right to divulge what's truth and fiction, But
yeah.
Sometimes for a song like that, it's really not. It's not. I'm not really. I'm bearing my soul to explain that when I was. Oh, actually, no. When I turned 20, I remember it was my 20th birthday.
Yeah.
I was in Ann Arbor. I was selling posters. To call, how I don't know that you're familiar with how I can call, at least back in the day. I think they still do it. Around the beginning of the semester, these poster kiosks pop up.
Yep.
So you can decorate your dorm room.
Yep.
With Scarface posters and like weed posters and Pink Floyd.
I feel like that's a 90s thing. I don't know if it's still a thing, but I hope it is, because those. Yeah, I mean
it may not be as popular anymore.
Yeah, but I graduated college in 2004. It was still around, but I lived in Eugene, Oregon, went to the University of Oregon. They lived back in the 60s, so things like that will stick around forever there.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Eugene.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But yeah, so I was doing that, and it was it's one of those memories that stayed with me of like turning 20 on the road. It kind of felt like that was the closest I could get. I'd already done a little bit of touring with Commander Venus and a little bit with, I guess not with Cursive yet at that point, or perhaps not, but I wanted to be out traveling. I wanted to see the world so badly, and it kind of felt like that was the only version I could do, was via selling posters. And so it was, that tied in with like a new decade starting and feeling like I was becoming old at the ripe old age of 20.
Yeah, I know that's kind of my favorite thing, because it's written from a 20-year-old's perspective about like how they haven't done shit with their life. And I'm like, at 20, you really shouldn't have done anything with your life. But like, it's such a good song because you can tell it's got like that older spirit behind it, right? So it's not written by a 20-year-old necessarily. It's written by somebody who's looking back at the age of 20 and trying to say like, what have I done? Do you guys play that song live? Because I've seen you a couple times. I haven't heard that song ever live.
We do. It's it's long, and it's and it kind of takes its toll a little bit. So
yeah, I feel like if you're going to choose, it's Staying Alive or that song for like the opus that you can play, and Staying Alive is like one of everybody's favorites. So I think it kind of wins out a lot.
Actually, that's absolutely right. Yeah. It's kind of like we'll have a tendency to maybe bring one out or the other.
Yeah. Cool. So I think you have like one of the most distinctive singing voices in rock music, in my opinion, as well. And I know you've never really had vocal training, and you kind of talk about how, you're not a great singer or whatever. You're like, I've never really been a great singer, but I think what your voice does is it sounds like you're leaving your soul in every song. And that's what I think people appreciate, because whether you're screaming it or whispering it or just kind of talking in a song, what you're saying and the way you're saying it is exactly how it fits for that song. Do you ever like listen to your own voice and go, man, I wish I would have done it differently? Or what's your take on your own voice?
Well, one thing I think that everyone can relate to is that I don't feel great hearing my own voice. Just like we don't like hearing our voice on an answering machine or So oftentimes when I hear my vocals, I think I'll have the same thought, which is I just am really thankful that other people find value, find merit and appreciation in this voice, because it's been great for me. It's just surprise. It just surprises me. But I think that I would hope that most vocalists feel that way. I suppose there are many vocalists out there who are just totally amazing, and they kind of just recognize, like, well, yeah, I understand you like my voice because my voice is perfect or something, you know. But for me, I just feel really lucky that people think that this unusual voice is that it works for them. I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there that agree with me. That
well, I mean,
it doesn't work for them.
Yeah, I think when you're thinking of like great singers and stuff, I mean, we're not talking about singing like Steve Perry where you're hitting high falsettos at like full belt or something like that. But, you know, you do take on like falsettos. You do all sorts of stuff that, like, for somebody who hasn't, you know, I guess whatever, been properly trained or whatever you want to call it, like, you do it in a way that, like, I feel like you give every person a hope that you can actually sing if you just give it a shot and like actually practice.
I kind of like that. That's like it's like, yeah, even somebody as bad as me can sing. You can too.
That's not what I said.
I do appreciate that. I do appreciate having a lot of range. That is nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice feature to have, to be able to mess around with.
Yeah, so let's kind of talk about some of your work outside of Cursive, because I will admit I've listened to the Cursive stuff way more than the solo stuff and the Good Life stuff, but I still love, I mean, I've gone back even recently and gone back through the whole catalog because I'm just like, God damn, like every song is so good. I'm like, album of the year was like incredible. Do you like ever like feel like you're ever going to run out of ideas for songs, or do you think that you're putting out too much? Do you ever like think to yourself, like, maybe I should hold back some stuff, or is it just like you feel good because you keep creating stuff? I mean, everybody has a different opinion on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely feel like, I mean, it's kind of how I'm feeling right now as I'm starting work on a new Cursive record. It's writing lyrics. It's just like, well, what do I sing about? What am I going to write about this time? And you can kind of get that feeling of, like you're saying, like, oh, well, maybe there's nothing else to say, or but I don't usually entertain those thoughts for long, because the world keeps shifting. Everything keeps happening.
Always new shit to
crazy
talk
shit
about.
Is always happening.
Yeah.
And we also keep going through new experiences as we keep trudging through life, you know, and there's always something to contemplate. So I don't really fall into that hole too often, because I kind of know I have a lot of songwriter friends who kind of go through that, like, I'm done writing, there's no more songs. It's just like
it's like I've reached the end of the internet.
More songs. Yeah, right.
I mean, because I've thought the same thing too, because I still write and record and play music myself and stuff, but, you know, I'll get to a point where I'm like, have I written all the good songs that I can possibly create, or do I still have like some left? And then I'll write a good one. I'm like, where the shit did that come from? Like, I have no idea what inspired that or whatever. But like, even like that song, What Have I Done? So like, if you wrote it at 20 years old and then you wrote it at 40 years old, it'd be two different experiences writing about the exact same thing.
True. Yeah. That's actually a really good point that I've also pondered, is that with every decade you're alive, you have another decade's worth of different experiences. And you could write about the same glass of water that you wrote about when you're 30. You can write about it again when you're 40 and 50.
Yeah.
And you're going to see it differently.
Yep, exactly. So do you ever have a struggle of like which songs sit with which project, or do you kind of just like you write for one thing at a time, and then if you have stuff left over, like that's just left over, and then you actually just write all new stuff for each project?
I just write a record at a time for the almost exclusively. There's sometimes there's been some necessary shifts, but so it's not, so that's never much of a struggle to me. In my head, there are these kind of obscured rules of what makes a solo song.
You have like compartments for each thing.
or a cursive song, yeah. And it's like, I don't know if I can always say exactly what those rules are, but I kind of just know them when I'm doing it. So if I'm working on a cursive record, I'm not really exploring what a good life song is, you know?
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
That's good. Cause like a lot of people, you can tell like here's a side project, here's a solo album. And you're like, this honestly just sounds like bad batches of B-side songs from their current project, but it's never been that way with you. It's like, this is clearly like Tim Kasher's work. This is clearly Good Life. And this is clearly Cursive. And I don't know how you do it because they all sound individually like great. And I've never seen one person create 3 acts as well as you to have. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, thanks. I definitely a lot of credit due to the musicians.
Yeah.
Who really shaped the songs quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, you work with like, you know, an incredibly close knit group of friends and musicians too. So I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think one of the things I really like about your writing is that you use allegories to project the opposite of an intended story in a lot of ways. For example, you might use a Bible story to show how screwed up the real world is, or you might use a fairy tale to show the darkness of mankind. I mean, Happy Hallow was full of them. Then you had like Driftwood, a fairy tale on Ugly Organ. I can point off, you know, just a couple of examples, but do you like using common stories to entangle a listener in more complex ways to kind of get them to listen? Like you mentioned Pinocchio and they're like, oh, what's that about Pinocchio? And then they kind of like hook in and then try to figure out what the hell you're actually talking about. Is that kind of what you're thinking about when you're writing the songs?
I think I think it's been inadvertent that I do that, but yeah, absolutely. I think that, and I'm going to kind of talk out of my ass here as I'm trying to realize what it is. I'm a big believer in stereotypes, not as a in a derogatory sense, but when you're trying to relay as much of a story or as much of an emotion or idea as you can, but you only have a very finite amount of time to do it, or only like a certain set of lyrics to do it, then stereotypes are your best friend because you can, you know, and it doesn't have to just be stereotypes. It could also be cultural touchstones. Yeah. So it can help you potentially like get a greater group of people all on the same page a lot faster, a lot sooner. If you write a song, if you use the Tin Man as your example, you know, because now we all know who the Tin Man is. We know the Tin Man's problems, you know. Yeah. So, and there's also a playfulness to it that I think I like. I like to use certain cultural touchstones to kind of.
Yeah, and obviously growing up in Nebraska, like religion is abundant. I mean, I grew up in North Dakota, Montana, and it's very similar. So to be able to kind of rebel, but also use it in a way that, like, if you're not super religious, you can actually look at it and say, you know, this makes sense. Like, even if you're super religious, the meanings will mean the same, but they'll just offend you, right?
Yeah, I guess that's possible. Anyway, that's the danger for sure. Which is something I'm willing to accept because I do think that even the most religious people should still be questioning their faith. Yeah. There's not harm in that, and you shouldn't believe in a God who will strike you down for questioning your faith. I think that's a healthy. If you're living an enlightened existence, you should also be questioning everything. So
yeah, I mean Emerson and Thoreau both basically said that. They were both deeply religious guys. Like, think about how you are on earth and think about how you will be in heaven and all this stuff. And it's like, doesn't mean you have to question God, but still think about how you can be a good human.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. So one of the things about the show is that when I get really good musicians on, I obviously want to talk about some of the musical aspects about it, because I've been playing since I was 11 and still play not nearly as good as anybody who I interview. But I want to talk about timing signatures for a second, because you dabble in off timing every once in a while. One song being Night and Day from the album of the year is in 3/4 timing, for example. Do you ever naturally create a song in anything other than 4/4 timing? Because I have to go out of my way to specifically say, I'm going to create this in 3/4 timing to make it sound this way. I never naturally create anything out of 4/4 timing.
Oh, yeah, maybe I'm a little bit lucky in that regard, that 3/4 is very natural to me. 6/8 is natural to me, and that's like even before I even understood what they were. I was writing in 6/8 and 3/4 as a 15-year-old. it just didn't know. I just didn't know what sign to.
Was it from like music you listen to, or is it just like that's kind of the natural strumming pattern you have?
I think it's just from music I listen to. 6/8's a pretty popular kind of like jangly kind of a thing, you know, that you get from like Britpop, say, or indie rock back then, or probably for now too. But also, I love messing with time. So over the years, I write in 5 now enough that 5 is actually becoming a fairly natural time signature.
I've noticed that too. I'm like, I don't even know what time this is, so I have to then break it down. I'm like, okay, that's like 5/8 timing or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 and 7 is cool, and 11 is wild. And I don't think I've ever done anything in 11, but I appreciate it when people do.
Yeah. Awesome. So one thing I obviously mentioned earlier was that there's kind of new things happening with the internet, and there's privatizations of fan bases going on. Obviously, through the pandemic, this has helped a lot of our artists actually be able to continue to make money, and that's stuff like doing a Patreon and stuff like that. And you've actually done a couple live streams, which are quite intimate. I mean, you're playing live to maybe 40, 50, 60, maybe 100 people or whatever, just because they're literally like huge fans of you. Do you think like kinds of services like this are like a way to help artists survive during times of lockdown, or do you see it like as a way to support artists ongoing?
I don't really know yet, but it seems like maybe too soon to tell. But I think that your hunch that it might be an ongoing way that to kind of to support artists that you like, that makes sense. I mean, it kind of I could see it. I could see it sticking around for inevitably.
Obviously, the one cool thing about it was everybody was at home, so you're like, well, how do I play music? How do I get in front of people? How do I even get the new stuff in my head out to the world? And when you had mentioned on Instagram, I think it was like, hey, I'm doing a live stream. I was like, oh yeah, shit, I keep forgetting about this. And then you have some incredibly deep, as you call them, deep cuts. Well, not you, but as people would call them, deep cuts that you throw on that home phone as well. So if you guys are listening to this and you're a fan of Cursive, go to Tim Kasher's home phone, subscribe, worth every single penny. It's awesome because you'll hear like the song that you just released, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and you're like, the demo version, if I ever put this out into the world, I would never change it because it's just that cool. I'm like, it sounded amazing.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. So now you're not just a musician either. Obviously, you've done some stuff like film projects, right? You actually wrote and directed at least one movie. I think you had another script that never got put in development, but you did create No Resolution. I remember on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, you mentioned like, New Year's is one of your favorite holidays. You even wrote a movie about it. So it's a movie about basically a musician who struggles to define whether he's going to settle down or go back out on the road, right? So I feel like that is a constant struggle for a lot of, pretty much anybody who's over 30 and a musician, and they have to like decide, is this a career or is this like just a hobby that I'm going to put away? Have you had to really deal with that? Like, I mean, what kind of situation or personal struggle did you have with that choice?
Yeah, I mean, it's an experience, or it's a decision that I've probably had to face a handful of times in my life. But also, it's a decision that I've seen so many peers be faced with as well.
Yeah.
It's funny being a musician is kind of funny because it's we get a bad rap in a lot of ways. It's like it's that we're not growing up and it's just kind of a silly hobby, and that can be tough because we all of us musicians know that it's not a silly hobby.
Yeah, and then there's the people that are listening to you on Spotify who are 45 and like, I can't believe these guys are still making. You're listening to it. Like, shut the hell up.
Yeah. So yeah, the movie's kind of about that, about a guy who, it's kind of clear that his band's not very important and that he probably really should put it on the back burner or put it lower on his list of priorities, but he's not willing to because as all of us musicians know, that's not easy to do. That's not. It's true. It's like it's where so much of your heart is poured into this, even if it's just a matter of the one EP that you did and the handful of local shows you did. It doesn't change. It doesn't change the fact that this is like, it means so much. It means so much.
I mean, it's like having a kid, right? You grow, you try to build it, to grow it, and to flourish it, and to nurture it, and then to say like you're going to just let it go. That's pretty tough to do.
Yeah, but the movie is also about a slap in the face and like, well, no, sometimes it's better to grow up. You piece of shit.
And also the title, No Resolution. I don't want to give any spoilers, but essentially that's the end result, is there is no resolution in the end, and you're kind of left with this like almost like, oh shit feeling at the end. You're just like, well, now what the fuck's gonna happen now? So
we often have joked about doing a sequel to that movie, but I'm sure it never will. But
or he's just like sleeping on a couch somewhere in like a hotel or something, lobby or something.
Our joke sequel is that, because I don't know if you noticed, but I have like a very teensy cameo in it.
Oh yeah, I think you're backyard drinking or something like that, aren't you?
I give the main like protagonist and antagonist a beer.
Yeah.
And so the sequel is supposed to be that he comes and moves into my apartment and sleeps on my couch.
And he's a bum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So obviously the movie's based on the album, or did the music come first, or did the project kind of come together at the same time? Because there is an album obviously called No Resolution.
That, if you don't mind a little bit of a little short story.
Sure.
It came together kind of clumsily, because there was another script. I have quite a few scripts I've written over the years. So there's another script I had called Red Rover, that had been cast, and it had been funded, and was ready to shoot earlier in that year, which I think this was like 2014 actually, I think. And then I had a squabble with the producer and with the producer and the investor, backed out and owned the right. He backed out with the ownership, with the rights to the script. So I no longer have the rights to that script.
So we need to get a petition going, or like do some door knocking or something to make this happen then?
Yeah. Well, so anyways, that script I'd already written probably like half the music for that one. I had the rest of the year open, and so I was so fiercely set on still shooting something, so I just pivoted over to No Resolution, and and funded it myself. It was all just it was very reactionary to this guy usurping my script. And so I shot it in our apartment, and I took some of those songs from Red Rover, and I kind of rewrote them to work better for No Resolution, and then finished writing the record kind of in tandem with the production.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. I think there's a line from A Grown Man where you say, "I don't want a kid and I can't keep being one." That's a pretty symbolic line for most of the music you make. I mean, do you feel like that's fair, and do you still feel that way?
Yeah. But it's a good feeling though.
Yeah.
Also, I'm in a good place that I'm 47, and I have my wife Gwyneth is just like a excellent person and a best friend of mine, and is very I'm a very responsible child, so she's like very supportive of me being a responsible child.
That's awesome. So obviously, let's talk about the tour. You're on tour right now with Thursday, Appleseed Cast, a couple other a couple other supporting acts. I think Jeremy Ennick is doing some stuff with you guys as well, and he was the former lead singer of Sunny Day Real Estate. This seems like one of those lineups that like rarely ever happens for indie rock, and it's, in my opinion, just completely stacked. So what's your thoughts on the tours, and how did this come together?
Yeah, I was so excited about it. We Thursday in Cursive were set to tour for some time now. Actually, this was like all a rescheduled tour from 2020. I don't know, 2021, I guess. 2020. It was 2020 actually. It was supposed to be in 2020. It's ridiculous how time is kind of folded on itself.
Feels like so long ago.
Yeah. But then kind of later in the game, just like a few months ago, Appleseed Cast and Jeremy got posted onto it. And I was just like, it really blew my mind. I was like, that's really a handsome looking tour. And I was really I've been glad to be a part of it.
Yeah. So now I'm going to ask, I have no idea if this is a remotely accurate question or not, so I'm going to get your take on it. But I kind of made the assumption that in my lifetime that Cursive kind of, now this is completely in my own head, but kind of took the reign of indie rock champions from Sunny Day Real Estate. Because when Sunny Day Real Estate broke up, I was like, and I wasn't like super huge into them at the time, but then like once they broke up, I started going back into the music. I'm like, holy shit, this music is so good. And then that's kind of the same time like Cursive kind of started coming up. I mean, did you guys have like any large scale influence from them, or was it just like a peer to peer, like you guys kind of knew of each other? Did they shape any of your music in any way? Because it's a very, very similar style in my opinion.
Yeah, they shaped it a ton, but also Sunny Day, I'm of the opinion that Sunny Day shaped pretty much so much the majority of that kind of post-hardcore music that was happening.
Yeah.
Like ever.
Yeah, I mean, even Foo Fighters had two members, and Nate Mendel still in the band. I mean, there's bands like Foo Fighters where they still get influenced by Sunny Day Real Estate.
Diary is one of those seminal records that truly shifted the landscape.
Yeah.
Kind of like Airplane Over the Sea, Neutral Milk Hotel, like shifted the landscape for kind of like indie folk rock.
Yeah.
You know? That's definitely Sunny Day Real Estate that's like you can see like the before and after Diary came out, and it's palpable like how much the music scene changed.
Yeah,
like they created a scene practically. You know,
it's similar to like Nirvana's Nevermind in that sense, except for it's not commercially huge, right? I mean, it's one of those like if you know of that album, it's instantly you love it, and I don't think there's anybody who hates it because it's either you love it or you've never heard it. That's it.
Yeah, I can't make any direct through lines from Sunny Day Real Estate to say Fall Out Boy or Panic at the Disco or My Chemical Romance. But I will say that I'm positive that those bands would not sound like they do if Sunny Day Real Estate had not existed. Yeah,
exactly. Very cool. Because, like I said, in my head, it was like I see like a linear kind of thing here, and then like drop off, and then Cursive kind of taking over. But I could have just been in my head. I mean, I like to look at rock history and music history, but had no idea if like there was any connection or if like it was like I've never heard of Sunny Day Real Estate until Jeremy was on the tour or what.
We didn't really we didn't know him at the time. Like we were just reminiscing the other day about we got to open for Sunny Day in about the year 2000 in Providence, and it was very exciting. I remember standing in the doorway of their green room, just kind of sheepishly saying hi and that I appreciated the music. But Jeremy, Cursive took Jeremy out for a tour like in 2006 or 2007. He's a great guy.
Yeah. I mean, the fact I actually didn't know he was still making music, and then when you guys said, obviously he's coming on tour, I was like, oh shit, let me go back and look at some of this stuff. And his voice is just so melodic, and it's like he can be singing about whatever. Very similar to yours in the sense, but like yours is a little bit more. I don't know. I guess rough. His is melodic. Yours is rough. But the way that you guys sing about stuff is you sing about anything, and that voice will just transform the meaning in such a personal and like emotionally soul crushing way or whatever. Like, talk about your dog dying. Tim Kasher or Jeremy Yannick do the song. You're going to cry by the end of it. I guarantee it. So let's talk about some of the things that, obviously you said you were working on a new Cursive album. So is that currently the only one of the 3 projects that you're working on new music for right now? Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
And do you know when that might be ready, or are you like just starting that?
We've written half of it, and but it's always a slow going process, not just just the process of writing songs. It takes a while. I write a lot. That's kind of also what the Patreon's about, is that there's so much extra stuff that I kind of wanted to find other outlets for all the other music I have on my desk. I guess I've written about 50 songs already, and we've developed only like a small portion of those, and I'd like to write probably another 50, as strange as that sounds, just to make sure that you get the best stuff out of there. And so it's something that we'll probably hope to release like late in 2023.
Okay, sounds good. Now, obviously, I'll put some links to any of the music below. Obviously, the tour that you guys are doing, the home phone stuff. But did you want to plug anything or say anything to like fans or people who might not have heard you guys yet phenomenally before we go?
I guess there's just no, not really. There's just stuff I can't really say yet, but I do have lots of big announcements coming up in like the next month. So
awesome. So we'll definitely keep an eye. So make sure you're following Tim and Cursive and everybody on Instagram and Facebook or wherever. But, Tim, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been an awesome conversation. Like I said, it's when I put this podcast together, these are the kinds of interviews I've been wanting to talk to musicians like yourself for so long. So I appreciate your time. Guys, if you haven't heard of Cursive or The Good Life or Tim, go to the show notes below, check out the music. If you are a fan, go follow him, follow the bands, and make sure that you're paying attention because, like Tim said, there's going to be some big announcements coming soon. If you like what you heard on the show, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends on social media. You can see the full video interview on our YouTube channel as well. Also, if you want to check out some of our written content or any of the products or merch that we have available, go to poweredbyrock.com to read our absolutely free rocking blog full of album reviews, interviews, and lists to keep you entertained. And find our gear as well so you can pick up some things, obviously to play and look like a rock legend. That's our show for today. We'll see you soon for the next episode. Until then, rock on.